Hello, and welcome to the Kathleen Spracklin podcast. I am a woman on a mission to help you get the Zettelkasten of your dreams on your work table beside you. Well, today I'm addressing a question. What do you do if you have a new main card that's an absolute orphan in your system? There's no card existing in your system right now that this card goes with. What should you do then? And I'm actually going to discuss 3 different approaches for what you can do, and you get to choose between the 3 or make up a 4th if none of the 3 appeals to you. So come on over to the down-facing camera. I'll share a simple card with you and go through 3 different ways you can deal with this. See you over at the down-facing camera. Okay, here's the card in question, and it is Richard Feynman's The Character of Physical Law, and it's the information from the book is that physical laws are rhythms and patterns of nature that are not visible to the eye. And my reflection on that was that we see sunrise and sunset, but it's not apparent to the eye how the times and locations of sunrise and sunset changes with the seasons. And so I made the tagline that physical laws describe patterns in nature we can't see. Now, I don't happen to have anything about physics in my Zettelkasten at this point in time. So this card is a bona fide orphan. So how might I deal with an orphan card? Well, there is a very valid way of dealing with it that is the simplest way possible, and that would be to put it into an incubation box. Some people call it a rumination box or a dump box. And you just let it percolate for a while and just say, later. Well, that's kicking the can down the road. If you don't build up too many of them, especially if you don't build up too many in a field that's really vital for you, you can get away with that for a while. But at some point in time, you're going to want to deal with it. The second commonest way of dealing with it would be to say, oh, now I know why I like categories. Because if I have a set of categories, then one of my categories is going to be science, and one of the subcategories in science is going to be physics. And so I have categories in physics, and then I can break it down a little bit if I need to break it down further, and then I'll have a spot for it. And again, that's valid. You know how I feel about categories. I'm not crazy about them because they're dead. A category title, even if it just says physics, what does that tell you? I'm all about the conversations. So my feeling would be that if you really do want to use the category approach, then assign your category however you need to, but make a foundation card for it so it's not dead. So then I have this foundation card that says, I want to learn more about physics because Richard Feynman makes it seem so interesting. Seems a bit artificial, but oh well, it was. And then physics is a big topic, and it takes me far away from my reading plan, but I'm deeply curious, so maybe for recreation. Again, this was a bit of an invention, but it saved me from just having a category card that just says 60 through 10 physics and nothing else on the card. And now this card could easily choose this card as a parent. Did you solve its orphan stature? I don't think you really have, because you still don't have too much of a conversation going. You've got Richard Feynman makes physics fascinating. Physical laws describe patterns in nature we can't see. Yeah, that's not really getting to me too far to be a very exciting conversation. But it is a completely valid way of dealing with things. My only complaint with it is that it's still an orphan. Just because it now has a number didn't make it any less an orphan. There's yet a third way of dealing with it. And the third way of dealing with it says, well, I may not have anything specific about physics, but what about laws or patterns or nature or even vision if I have to? So then I go to my index and I look at patterns. Oh, I've got some cards here on patterns. Well, here's one that just says capture a pattern. That wouldn't really cut it according to my current way of using taglines. That's not contributing much to a conversation, but it would be worth pulling that card. And here's one, are patterns fundamental to intelligence? Very interesting. And another one, a genius sees patterns we miss. Well, let's take a look and see what we can bring to the conversation if we say, what if this card chooses one of these as its parent, going off patterns and saying, well, okay, it's not about physics, but it's about pattern. And we have three choices following this. This last one, MD1, comes from Sertalanges. He shows up a lot in my Zettelkasten. I made more main cards from that book than any. It was the first book that I Zettelkasten, and I think I got a little carried away because I got a jillion Sertalanges quotes in my Zettelkasten. So the quote there is that a genius can look at the same world we look at and see things we don't see. When we read their work, suddenly we can see it too. It was always there, but only now can we see it. A genius sees patterns we miss. Holy cow, I think that's an excellent possible parent for this card, so much so that if this card doesn't choose it as its parent, I'm gonna go for a link to this card, because isn't that really what's going on with physicists? They study the laws of the nature, they find the patterns, and once they've expressed it in the form of their work, suddenly we can see the patterns too. So that is a perfectly lovely parent. So that proves the third method. You can go find another card in your system that's a tangential match. I could go through the other two matches, but they would be the same kind of reasoning. And this, I think, does a fine illustration of what the three possibilities are. So don't fret if it seems that you don't have a match. You can save it for later and wait for more cards to show up in your Zettelkasten to see if you have a match later. You can use categories and probably want to give it a foundation card to go with it so it won't be all alone. But still, those two cards are still going to be all by themselves in the Zettelkasten. It only helps to a small degree. The third thing you can do is you can go for one of the other keywords in your tagline and say, what about a tangential match? Because sometimes the tangential matches can be the most fruitful for thoughts. So I hope you enjoyed this little video, and I hope it helps you solve the problem of those orphan cards in your system, and that it will help you get your Zettelkasten off the ground. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.